Namaskar and welcome to the Indologia podcast, where we journey through the pages of history, politics, and dharma. In each episode, I read to you excerpts from important books, offering insights into the Bharatiya civilization in a quest to discover why we are what we currently are. Today, I'm going to read you an excerpt from a book called Parva. Parva is a retelling of the Mahabharata, written by Shri S.L. Bhyrappa, who I feel should be way more famous in this country than he currently is. Shri Bhyrappa has written over 24 novels, many of which have been translated into several Indian languages. He won the Sahitya Akademi Award for his novel Dhatu in 1975. He won the Saraswati Samman for his novel Mantra in 2010, which is one of the highest literary honors of India. And he was also awarded the Padma Shri in 2016 for his contributions to literature and education. So why have I chosen this book? We all know the story of the Mahabharata. What's so special about this? Well, Shri Bhyrappa's journey to write Parva was an intense and immersive process which spanned over 5 years. His approach was meticulous and deeply engaging that allowed him to breathe new life into this ancient epic. Firstly, Shri Bhyrappa embarked on extensive travels, visiting various locations mentioned in the Mahabharata. He walked the ancient paths and immersed himself in the landscapes and absorbed the atmosphere of these historical places. This hands-on exploration helped him recreate the setting of his novel with remarkable authenticity. Beyond just exploring the land, he delved deep into the historical and cultural context of the Mahabharata era. He studied how people lived, their social structures, daily rituals, and customs. This rich background research allowed him to strip away the mythological elements of the story and present it as a believable historical account. Understanding the lives of the people during the time was crucial, so he examined the customs, the rituals, and the societal roles, learning about their social hierarchies and occupations. This research allowed him to portray his characters as authentic and relatable individuals grounded in their historical context. His engagement with the Mahabharata went beyond mere reading it. He analyzed it from every possible angle. He explored the motivations and perspectives of various characters. This style provided a multifaceted view of the epic's events and ethical dilemmas, adding depth and complexity to the story. Throughout his research, he sought the advice of historians, archaeologists, and scholars. Their insights ensured that his portrayal of the Mahabharata was accurate and rich in detail. Really, Parva should not be seen as a retelling of the Mahabharata, but as a story rooted in real human experiences and historical context. Shri Bhyrappa's thorough and passionate research has transformed Parva into a piece of literature that resonates with authenticity and depth, presenting the Mahabharata as a narrative that is grounded in reality. With that being said, I'll now read to you an interesting excerpt from the book. Shri Bhyrappa writes, Krishna too was camping in Uplavya city. It was the center of the war efforts of the Pandavas. It was by no means a small town, but it was also not very large. In fact, not even half as large as the capital of Virat kingdom, the Virat city. The king of Virat had left it for his newly acquired kin through marriage, so that they had a place for planning and preparing for the expected war. He had got enough houses vacated to accommodate not only Pandavas, but also the kings invited to join them in the war. Unable to stand the burning noon heat, Bhim slept on the cool mortar floor. The windows were covered with hanging carpets woven out of lamanka roots. Servants were continuously pouring water on them to cool the air. Bhim was actually half asleep. No doubt he had decided not to eat too much, but how could one resist the temptation to overeat when one had before one such tasty dishes as karamba and the mutton? As usual, that day too, Bhim's belly was overfull. On top of it, there was this oppressive sultriness. The suffering would be for a short time longer, and then the sun would go down, and a breeze would blow. The heat would reduce. He thought to himself, "It is better under the tree outside than here under the cool of the Lamanka mat." With such thoughts, he was rolling to one side when a servant came in and announced, "King Yadav Krishna has arrived." Bhim sat up. Though a wooden seat covered with silk cloth was pushed before him for sitting, Krishna preferred to sit on the bare mortar floor next to Bhim, perhaps because it felt cooler. Bhim knew very well why Krishna had arrived there. This knowledge revived the mental turmoil within, which had earlier subsided a little. Setting aside his upper garment and wiping away the sweat on his neck and chest, Krishna said, "After all, the cows from the Matsya country are of quality breed. The thickness of their milk can be found only in the milk of our Mathura cows. That is why one never gets tired of eating karambha. Isn't it true?" Bhim did not say anything. Krishna divined his inner feelings by looking at his face. He repeated the question to Bhim. "Isn't it true?" Bhim said, "I have no idea of the taste of your Mathura cow milk. I can, however, assure you that the milk given by these Virat cows is fantastic. If the cows graze the lush green grass on the hill slopes, then they can give rich milk. But the cattle get tired because of their climb up and down the hills, and they tend to yield less quantity. It could be because the water in the body goes out as sweat, and thus the quantity is reduced." Krishna said, "Bravo, Bhim. I do not possess the knowledge about cows that you seem to possess." Krishna moved closer to Bhim and appreciatively fondled his shoulder. "Krishna, as you say, I am more expert in eating items like cow's milk, curd, ghee, and so on than you. I do not think that you are praising me without meaning it. I also know that you have come here now for something more important than merely praising. I suspect that you have come here to persuade me to sacrifice my siesta and then accompany you. And your praise of me is meant to do just this. You see, large-bodied persons like me sweat a lot. In a way, persons like you are better off." Fanning himself with a fan made of Lamanka roots 4 times rapidly, he said, "The riding horses too do not get tired." Krishna replied, "You're waving the fan to cool only yourself. Please see that the breeze blows my way a little too." Then he positioned his chest towards Bhim's fan. Feeling the relief, he said, "You said you are to accompany me there. Well, where is this there? Tell me frankly. After all, she is your first wife. She is the one who won your tender heart. You feel too shy even to mention her name. Filled with love within, why pretend stubbornly to be innocent?" This enraged Bhim. He was so angry that had it been anyone else other than Krishna, he would have thrashed him twice. Restraining himself, he said, "I am 53 or 54, and if mother were here, she would have given a more accurate figure. Moreover, there has been sexual abstinence forced by 12 years of exile in forest, also 1 year of servitude in incognito. There is now no room for women and love in me." Krishna said, "Of course, I know that you never desire other women, but the one I am referring to is a wife whom you have passionately loved and married. So how does she count?" "No, that's not what I am saying. It is true that this Bhim is past 50 and starved in the forest for 12 years, but the power of his arms has not decreased. He is son of Pritha, born to her of a Dev army chief, and he can beat any enemy army. When he is there, why should you go around begging for support? Bhim and beggary do not mix. I shall not go on a begging mission. Talk of something else, please." And Krishna replied, "How can inviting alliances for war be regarded as beggary? We have sent such missions to several kings. Duryodhan also has been sending them. Can all that be called begging? Moreover, when even other friendly rulers are supporting us, Should not a sun, a powerful sun that you have created, not come to our aid? But how can he come unless he is aware of the situation? It is your task to go and inform him. And of course, you will have a chance to look up your wife. Krishna spoke in a grave but intimate tone. Bhim's face, normally red, turned redder. Dumbstruck, he began to stare down at the fan. At the edge of the wall, a large summer fly repeated its motion of hitting the wall and flying away from it. After a while, Krishna continued. After marriage, you did not visit them even once. You did not fondle and bring up the child. You never set your eyes on your wife. Therefore, it is natural that you should ask, with what straight face can I go and request him to join us with his Rakshas army? In the first place, you should know that everybody is bound by the norms and rules of the community to which he or she belongs. Aren't there communities in which the father has no responsibility for nurturing the children, which falls entirely to the lot of the mother? In such groups, one never asks a father why he neglected one's upbringing. It is even likely that she may not complain that you never returned to her. In any case, all of your time was spent in exile and servitude. Where was the question of you bringing her? If you explain, won't she understand? I can understand your embarrassment. Krishna stopped his speech at this point. Bhim was able to think of an immediate response. Of course, you can read everybody's mind. You're such a clever person. There was anger, not only in the voice but also in the face, eyes and nose. The right hand, which was holding the fan at rest, now suddenly began fanning rapidly. The consequent stir in the air upset the rhythm of the motion of the summer fly. Krishna continued a little longer his silence. Then he spoke very slowly. The prowess of arms is useful only in a single-handed combat. You must remember that Duryodhan is not stupid like Jarasandha. Suppose you were to challenge him to fight you single-handed and say that the fight would decide who should get the kingdom, Duryodhan will certainly not be foolish enough to accept it. Even the wealth you had stored in Indraprastha is now a part of his treasury. This means he will have behind him more kings, a larger army, more chariots, more horses and elephants. Against all of this, of what use is the power of your arms alone? You should not hesitate to accept soldiers to join your side, no matter where they come from. One more thing you must keep in mind. At that point, Bhim's right hand stopped fanning, and his eyes, so far looking down at the ground, now were raised to meet Krishna's eyes. Krishna continued relentlessly. Remember that Duryodhan is sending emissaries to negotiate alliances with the Rakshasas, the groups to which belonged the Rakshasas you slew, Hidimba, Baka, Kimira and others. Don't you think that they are just waiting to get a chance to avenge the death of these Rakshasas? In warfare, the Rakshasas have a distinct style of their own. You too know it. They rush in the darkness of the night and keep fighting. Moreover, can our folk match their bravery in overpowering the enemy without regard for their own life? What could you by yourself do if we do not have at least some Rakshas support to counter Duryodhan's Rakshas supporters? Bhim's eyes met Krishna's, trying to size them up. The summer fly was no longer near the wall. Bhim did not bother to turn his neck to see which way the fly had flown. Outside, the servants were busy pouring water over the lamanka mats to soak them. Bhim was saying to himself, "This is not a bad town, and there is plenty of water even in summer." Krishna interrupted his thought by saying, "Tell me, who is better qualified than you to approach the Rakshas leader Ghatotkacha?" Far away, the silence was disturbed by the sound of clanging. It was the sort of sound produced by a hammer hitting an anvil. At that time, the trees and plants made noise as the wind blew. A dusty storm rose, the wind reaching the sky to bring down the pervasive heat. But the wet lamanka mats were impervious to dust. Dust, therefore, wouldn't bother the sweat-soaked body. Bhim remembered. 12 years in forest. No, not fully 12. 4 years in the Himalayas between. And those 8 years, 8 summers, when we had to suffer the hell of dust bath. And yet, after the dust storm subsided, there was the heavenly bathing in a stream or a pond. Getting up, he said, "Krishna, let's go out. The storm is so beautiful to watch." Bhim stood up to go, and Krishna followed. The wind blew with terrific speed. The trees and vegetation in the surrounding forest swayed, trembled, and shook. The bamboo branches bent full circle. As dry bamboo trunks were forced to rub each other, they produced forest fire. The flames were spread by the wild wind. Yet, it wasn't the dust that covered the sky. But in this Uplavya town itself, dust had pervaded all space, covering everything like snow. Leaves and dry twigs rose and fell, caught in the wind. They would scatter and fall to the ground. Standing on the platform in the courtyard, Krishna and Bhim watched the scene. Krishna came up to the height of Bhim's shoulders. Krishna could reach Bhim's height only if he raised his hand fully. Bhim was watching the storm fully absorbed. Krishna too gradually became absorbed in the scene. The scene revived in his mind memories of watching tempests in Mathura, Vrindavan, way back in his boyhood. The clanging sound could be heard even during the storm. In less than an hour, the storm subsided, and the wind became calm. What followed was a gentle and cool breeze. All of a sudden, Bhim became enthusiastic. By that time, Krishna had returned to his residence. Alone, Bhim walked to the pond behind the town. Into the pond, set amidst trees and built of stones, Bhim plunged. He swam for a while, but the pond was not wide enough. He felt that the river Ganga was the best for swimming. That reminded him of Hastinavati, of the river whose banks were fringed by a dense growth of the white Solangi shrubs. Its water was cool even in summer. It was so close to Gangadwar, which could be reached by a day's walk, and waters flowed into Gangadwar from the snows melting in the Himalayas. It was an area where cold did not disappear even during summer. But how was the river Yamuna near Indraprasth? Somehow Yamuna failed to inspire the love Ganga could. He felt that no waters could create the kind of emotional attachment produced by the waters in which one had played as a young boy. Wasn't it there that the blind man's son made him eat a poisoned sweet meatball so that he would drown and die? But how can the river be blamed for this? Saying to himself that he loved Ganga more, he lay down, face up, and began to spit the water from his lips like a jet. This made him feel good. The water-filled eyes could not focus clearly, as if they had been smeared with oil. As a boy, he had enjoyed better diving into the water and leaping backward and forward in the water than swimming in it. Then the other swimmers with him found themselves caught up in the splash created by his leaps, water forced into their mouths, and they were driven by its force. This used to make him laugh, and then he would step out. But now, he had no inclination to play these boyhood games. He was fully content with smooth swimming and floating calmly in the waters. His head touched the bank of the pond. A sense of contempt for it rose in him as he cursed it. Damn it, it's such a small thing. One can only bathe, never swim in it. Then he came out of it. He dried himself on the bank, exposing his body to the wind. After that, he put his clothes on and walked home. Now he found the heat was more tolerable, and the body felt lighter. The sky no longer burned, as it was the time for the sun to sink. As soon as he reached home, a servant gave the message. The chief queen has arrived, and is waiting for you on the terrace in the cool air. Bhim climbed the steps straight away to reach the terrace. He thought, Draupadi has come at the right time, and I can unburden my mind to her. The two servant maids with her stood up as he approached Draupadi. Then immediately they left, climbing down the steps. Draupadi, who was squatting on the soft mat made of the jondu grass, stood up, came closer to her husband, took his hand in hers. The sky above was a limitless expanse of copper color. Draupadi's face, relatively darker than the average Arya face, looked now even darker with some worry. The white strands that showed in her hair gave her a look of maturity. Bhim gazed at her face, which came up to the height of his chest, and said, "Krishna, I had never seen you with so many white hairs." Half peevish and half jocular, she replied, "Well, now you are seeing them. Shall I get you a young princess with dazzlingly black hair as a bride?" Bhim sat down and made her sit down close to him. She sat still, and he looked up at the sky. After a very brief pause, he suddenly burst out, "I had gone down to swim. You have seen it, the small pond. It reminded me of Ganga, our river. Then I decided hereafter that Bhim will swim only in Ganga and never in Yamuna." Panchali was silent. When he was in this sort of mood, he always found her the ideal person to talk to. He never could unburden the secrets of his bosom, his dreams, to Arjun. This was because they had different kinds of dreams and outlooks. Brother Dharmaraj was a senior. In the early days, he could be intimate with him. But later, when he was coronated in Indraprasth, Dharmaraj had acquired royal aloofness, kingly stiffness. But Bhim never lost his boyishness, his penchant for practical jokes, his sense of daring. As the eldest brother was fool enough to lose in a game of dice everything and force his wife and brothers into exile, Bhim was angry enough to want to burn Dharma's hands in fire. He had said so much, and would have carried it out too if Arjun had not intervened. During the 12 years' exile, intermittently his rage against Dharma would flash. But only earlier, when Dharma reigned in Indraprasth, the brothers were able to work out a stable relationship. But after Dharma had played and lost the game of dice, Bhim had developed a contemptuous attitude towards him. And this had not only snapped their relations, but had also prevented any kind of friendship between them. As for Nakul and Sahadev, no matter how informal and friendly he tried to be with them, they, on their part, continued to be differential and odd. The result was that he had none but Panchali to share his dreams with him, none but her to relax with. Of course, none of her husbands, excepting Bhim, could refer to her as Krishna, Draupadi's natal name. "Didn't you hear what I said?" Bhim asked her. Draupadi replied, "Isn't the decision of the eldest brother final? It seems the king wanted Krishna to go out as an ambassador of peace. Krishna may go, but I am absolutely certain that no peace will come out of his negotiations." Suppose the old men persuaded Duryodhan to see reason. Then what? Sure, the old men will take the trouble to advise Duryodhan. Equally certainly he will not listen to them. None can understand better the working of his evil mind than I. Have you ever seen rival elephants poised to fight? Well, the two opposing animals know each other's mind far better than any third party. The only difficulty is that one cannot compare him to an elephant. He's more like a dog at the most. Don't forget that even a dog frightened by an elephant may agree to peace. "Krishna, look here," Bhim said. As if he wanted to show her the secrets of his chest, he made a gesture and then continued. "Dharmraj still hankers after the kingdom. He has his sights set on the kingship. Similarly, Arjun also is keen on it. Perhaps also Nakul and Sahadev. But as for me, what is the point of going back to the palace after 12 years in the forest, feeding on roots and fruits and hunted animals, and after a year of servitude in a stranger's kitchen during the best years of one's life? For me, it makes no difference, whether forest or palace. In fact, I have even developed quite a love for forest life. I have but just one goal, one passion in life: to wipe out from the face of earth Duryodhan, Dushasan, Karna and Shakuni and the entire Kaurava breed, and the blind fellow who had fathered them. They had humiliated me alive, provoked me in the dice assembly, insulted my wife as if she were a servant. Yes, I live only to avenge all this. Even if a peace is made and we get back Indraprasth, I shall be the army chief. Even after peace, I shall invade them and slay them all. That shall be my peace. I have never put these things so clearly and so strongly to anyone as I am now to you. I am sure Duryodhan knows this. He is not such a fool as to miss this. Doesn't the dog know how to sniff at things?" Draupadi began to look into his eyes with concentration. Even now, her eyes were like lotus blossoms. Bhim stared back at her eyes. In the silence between the two, their minds had merged, and they both knew this. All of a sudden, tears brimmed her eyes. Bhim realized that she would next break into a loud sobbing, but she controlled herself, and this anguished him. He said, "Krishna, if you cry, I too shall cry like a woman. But if you contain your feeling and suppress your cry, I shall get angry. With me, you should have no sense of pride." Now she couldn't control herself. She herself opened the floodgates of her tears. Moving closer, she rested her head on his lap and began to sob freely. Bhim clasped her as if she were a child. She started mumbling indistinctly, "If not with you, where else can I sob?" Clasping his thighs with her arms, she looked up into his face and saw his eyes overflowing with tears. She knew they would be full of tears, but she said, "Bhim, it is unbecoming of a man to shed tears like this. If one tear falls by accident, then it is equal to the very Ganga itself. I know how much tear has flown out of your eyes on my account. From other eyes, not even a drop will fall." Saying this to herself, she wiped the tear in his eyes with the end of her sari. This gave her a sense of relief. He stood silent. The evening had turned into night, and the stars were barely visible through the dusty air. Krishna was struggling hard to say something. Bhim couldn't make any sense out of it. As he watched her indistinct face in the darkness, Bhim's eyes saw the white beard of Duryodhana's blind father. At least that was how the beard looked 13 years ago. But how did it look now? He began to muse. Draupadi said, "Is it true that you're going there?" "Where?" "To ask for the support of the Rakshas army." "It was Krishna's suggestion. I thought he was right in making it." His mind was still searching for a clear picture of the white beard, which he had last seen 13.5 years ago. Fondling his arms gently, she said, "Can't this Bhim win without the assistance of that army?" Bhim replied, "Our enemy Duryodhana is believed to have collected a large number of Rakshasas behind him. We shall be severely handicapped if we do not have a matching counterforce on our side. Hence Krishna's thinking is right. Moreover, my son, let him come to his father's aid." And that excerpt that I just read to you was once again from the book called Parva by Sri S.L. Bhyrappa. I hope some of you will be interested in reading the rest of the book as well. I hope you liked this episode of the Indologia podcast. If you did, please give me a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, or whichever platform you're listening to this on. You should also follow me on the social medias. The name is the same everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, Telegram. It's Indologia, Indologia. Feel free to send me your feedback, your critique, or any comments or ideas that you may have. Until the next time I see you, Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.